Hey, Jodie, welcome to the Buy, Grow, Sell podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. I know we're going to be having a bit of a chat about your business, JC Social Media, but maybe I could kick over to you and you can give us a little bit of background and kind of what led you to start that business.
I started JC Social Media as just a solo freelancer who wanted nothing more than to update Facebook pages on behalf of different companies. And it really was that simple. So my business plan back in 2011 was just two words: get clients. And I went along to networking events. I was only 22 at the time. And I just introduced myself as a social media manager, and then got meeting interesting people. They got in touch and then started winning clients from there. And I don't think I thought of it as a business until probably about 8 months in, when I hired my first person, and then it just grew from there.
Nice. So I noticed checking out your LinkedIn profile, you went and did business management at the University of Sheffield. Like, was there anything, did that degree kind of give you a bit of a kickstart? Did you lean into marketing? Did you, what was was there any context that helped you make that step?
I think I took a business management degree because I wanted to leave my options quite open. I wouldn't say there was loads of practical information in the degree. And I think going to university is often just about learning how to be a functioning human rather than learning anything that you're then going to use in your career. Yeah. And interestingly, although I did study marketing within my degree, we didn't cover any social media. And even though 2 years later I left and started a social media agency. So I think a lot of the time education has to catch up with the real world. And that was definitely the case for me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I can relate to that. I did an MBA a few years back now, but marketing was the first subject I did, and I have an interest in marketing, but there was nothing in there about social media, literally not a word. It was all so old school. And by the time I finished the MBA, those subjects were so completely out of date because social had exploded and the way we engage out there had changed so much. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think education is very much about maybe giving you some frameworks on how to function and operate, more so than this is the vital piece of information you need to be able to be successful.
I think I really enjoyed that it wasn't written into textbooks yet. I kind of felt like I was writing the textbooks, and especially when my team and I would have things that we just had to figure out, I would say, like, there is no textbook for this. It's not like we're an accountancy firm who's got this, this blueprint way of doing things that's going to be relevant forever and ever. We are writing this from scratch. And I think I really enjoyed that way of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, you were kind of the Wild West of the social media, really. It's, it's people making it up as they're going, really. Yeah, that's fascinating. And what was the business model like? Like, did you, and it probably changed over time, but was it kind of, you did some fixed fee work? Did you put people on retainers? How did people engage with you?
From the very start, it was retainers. I think I read somewhere, I probably read like my first ever business book, and it was talking about monthly recurring work. So that's just what I started out with. I really didn't like project work. By the time we sold, we were 80% retainer work and 20% project. But even within the project, it was training contracts that would be sort of recurring at the same time, or we'd have repeat clients. But I was always very much like, you should be able to get clients, and the default should be that they stay. The default shouldn't be that they go on this date and then you have to repitch for the same clients. I didn't like that.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Initial project, let's get to know each other, but very clearly, this is how we engage going forward. That's interesting. And did you target any kind of particular industries, niches, stuff like that, or was it fairly broad? Or
at first, and bear in mind, this was 2011. Social media was not the thing it is now at all. So when I was going out and networking at first, I wasn't really talking to people about who they should use for social media. I was talking to people about why they should be on social media. So imagine having that conversation now. It's just unheard of. So I was setting up accounts for companies from scratch, and it was up to me to find their Twitter handle. Whereas now I just don't think that would happen. It's just one of the things that you do on day one. So at first, my niche was the whole of social media, which is huge. If I was starting from scratch now, I would probably pick one platform, one industry. But back then it was all of it, like you said, the Wild West. And so it was an accident really that I ended up getting a lot of clients in healthcare. But that was because I'd done a graduate scheme in health and social care, and I just knew people in that industry. So that was what happened naturally. But then even throughout the years of running the agency, I think we were still about 20 or 30% healthcare. And then some others came in. Actually, at one point, we had that many hospitality clients that I considered being a hospitality-focused social media agency. And then when March 2020 hit, I was so pleased that we didn't do that, because I think we would have had a bit of a rough time. Not as rough as hospitality, but I think we would have had a bit of a rough time. So yeah, we were pretty broad. It was healthcare, professional services, bit of hospitality, and then random other stuff.
Yeah, interesting. And so talk to me a little bit about, I guess the growth of the company. I mean, you said, I think it was 8 months that you hired your first employee. Was that one of those, talk to me through that. Was it a scary moment? Was it exciting? First time you've hired somebody? It's always interesting.
It was absolutely terrifying. I remember I knew I needed to hire someone because I had 40 hours of client work a week for myself, and I still wanted to go out and get more clients. And that was a real crossroads. It was, I could just do this forever. I could be a freelancer. I could just have clients. But I thought, no, I think I do want to hire, and I think I want to build something bigger. So I remember putting out a job description. I remember seeing people for interview and just thinking, I'm so unprepared to give an interview. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I'd been the other side of interviews, so I had a vague idea how you play bosses. So that's why. So I asked them questions that felt like the right questions to ask, and found people who, the first guy I hired, Jason, just seemed to fit the mold, seemed to be really good. And yeah, I was like, well, what's the worst that could happen? It could not work out. But then I'm sure there's ways of dealing with that. And yeah, it worked out really well.
Yeah, nice one. And so you hired your first employee after 8 months. I believe you held the business for 10 years. So what did growth look like over that 10-year period? How many employees did you end up with?
So when we sold, we were a team of 16. The business kind of went in phases. So the first, I'd say 3 years, I was pretty much the head of the company, and I was the bottleneck for everything. And it was kind of the Jodie show, which I imagine lots of agency owners have. And it was, just to kind of put it into context, I was doing all the finances. I was doing all the sales stuff. I was meeting clients. I was the head of, I was the key point of communication for all of the clients. And it was very unsustainable. And I remember at the time, I just wanted to go on holiday, and I realized that I couldn't go on holiday. And actually, this is quite funny because after that time period of about 3 years, I think I read the 4-hour work week, and I decided I think what I actually want is a business that is far more autonomous and runs better without me, so that I can go to Australia. So I actually, so my husband and I actually booked a 5-week trip to Sydney that was 3 months in the future. So we gave ourselves a 3-month deadline to work this out. And that's when I was like, I need to make a plan for this. And so the first thing I did was made a table of all the processes that happen in the business, every single one. It was about 60 different processes. And then in the next column went who did it now, which was pretty much just me in every single row. And then it was who's going to do it in the future. And into that column went either another person's name, another role that I had to hire, or it just said no one because it was a stupid process and it didn't even need to happen. I'd just been doing it because I'd always done it. And then the next column was the plan. It was, okay, I'm going to sort this out by this date. And that was the plan of how to get the business into a situation where it ran a lot better without me being needed on the ground. So that was the first 3 years. And then the next 5 years, was started by that 5-week trip to Australia. And then after that, what I did was went away for a month and then came back for 2 months and then went away for a month and then came back for 2 and did that on repeat for 5 years. So it was very much I guess I'd call it a lifestyle business, because my plans weren't to grow it to be really, really big and to, IPO or whatever else. It was very much to travel and to have a really cool life whilst also running a cool business.
I think that sounds very cool indeed. So, awesome. And I love the analogy, by the way, that how you broke down those processes, because I do think what you described there about it being the Jodie show, I think it's the same in so many businesses, that it's where we provide a service. It's easy for the sort of star power of the founder, to kind of outshine other people. So, but that was a great process on how you broke it down and sort of split it out. And giving yourself 3 months, by the way, congrats. I mean, I think some people take a lot longer to do it than that. Out of interest, as the business evolved, though, did you find you started, I mean, obviously you were shifting the requirements on you and the amount of time maybe you needed to put in, but did you find your interests in the business kind of moved? Like, did you lean into certain type of work over other?
Yeah, I'd say my journey throughout the business definitely evolved. It started off because I had an interest in just the work and doing the work. And then it evolved into wanting to hire really great people and train them to do a really amazing job. And then it moved into wanting to create processes and hire people for the sales side of things. And then maybe it moved into getting our SEO sorted so that we had inbound leads and there wasn't so much networking involved. So I think that my role very much evolved throughout. And I almost feel like I kind of evolved myself out of a role, because if you sort out every other area, then there's sort of nothing left to do. And by the time we sold, it was a very self-sufficient team with people who were really proud of owning their own areas. So I genuinely did sometimes feel like I was surplus to requirements, which actually is quite nice.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great goal to have for any business owner. So, was the team all based in the UK, or were they spread around, or what did that look like?
The team were all based in the UK, all based within probably a 10-mile radius of Birmingham, UK, up until March 2020, when we were quite lucky with that, because the office that we had was coming up for lease renewal. So we didn't renew because everyone was working from home anyway. And then that opened up our pool of candidates. So I think in that last year or so, it was, we hired people from all over, and it didn't matter that they were based in Birmingham.
Yeah, interesting. And I'm curious, because we had a similar thing with our business. We had an office based in North Sydney. COVID came along and they shut the office, and we all kind of wondered, well, why would you bother going back, given the way we all operate now? But I'm finding now that we're well into this whole pandemic, and yes, the world has shifted. But I'm finding people are starting to talk about the benefits of going back to an office, to have that kind of collaboration and engagement. You've clearly sat on both sides of that fence. How important do you think it was having that office initially and being able to build that culture in person?
I haven't got the experience of people going and working remotely and then coming back to an office, because when we sold, everyone was still remote working, although there is an office now that the buyer has. So sure. I think that going fully remote was something that I always wanted to do from the moment I started to go traveling, but just always chickened out and didn't actually do it. And it took a pandemic to go, actually, this is really what I think is best. I think that you definitely can build a rapport with people online. You really can. I think the odd, meeting up with people, having team away days or having team away trips or whatever, I think that all really helps. But I think that you can do it. It just takes more energy. I think it takes more energy communicating with people through Zoom calls. That's why people are so knackered by doing it, because you're not used to just staring at someone's face the whole time. And I think you have to almost have a bigger personality to make up for the fact that you're not next to someone. I think if I was like this right next to you, I think it might be a bit much. I'd probably tone it down a bit, but we're on looking at each other through a camera, so it's different. So I think it can work. I think the benefits to being remote are just huge. And And people being able to work their way and not just be in the same place arbitrarily because the company happens to have chosen that as their location. I think there's huge benefits to that.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think that makes a lot of sense. I love what you're saying about the sort of behavioral sort of shifts, because it's like we've almost sort of had to learn how to communicate for Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know that they can only see a certain amount. So you start shifting things. I'm trying to show body language or whatever it might be, right? With the limited kind of, it's kind of a weird new language.
At the start of the pandemic, when it was first about, a really good friend called Rob Geraghty used to have a company called Get Wow Factor, and he was a presentations coach. And it was almost like the moment that everyone went to remote working, he renamed his company to Presenting Virtually, and he started teaching people about this stuff, how to present, how to build a rapport, how to communicate with people really well over Zoom. And he calls it that area behind you. It's your Zoom zone. And he taught people all these different tips and tricks, and he's absolutely smashing it now because he just adapted so quickly. And he was a real inspiration for me when that first happened, as someone who was just really getting it sorted really fast. And so I credit him with a lot of the reasons why we actually ended up growing during the pandemic.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. It's once again amazing how so many little niche businesses have popped up in response to the change of working environment. It's I actually I was on a call with a guy. Oh gosh, it was probably a year ago now, but they had started specializing in these like little phone booths and things like this that you could install in different places. It was just this response to shared working spaces, but how people suddenly needed a little box of privacy every now and again to do calls. It was like, wow, I mean, nobody had actually thought of that when they designed all these places, which is kind of weird in itself. But yeah, interesting to see the adaptations and how many of these little niche businesses pop up. In fact, one of the things I've seen lately too is, I don't know how many LinkedIn experts there seems to be out there now, right? You talked about people not having social media profiles. Now it's like, oh my goodness, like who's your LinkedIn specialist? They're everywhere. So talk to me a little bit, Jodie. What you held the business for 10 years. You obviously, experienced some nice growth, and sounds like you went on a really interesting journey of discovery. At what point in the journey did you start thinking about exiting?
It was after, so March 2020, we all know what happened, and we shrank by about 25% in a week. And that was because we had clients in hospitality, travel, and events who were having a much worse time than we were, but that impacted us. So that was when it was a little bit panic stations. The main thing I wanted to do is just save jobs and not have to let anyone go. So I think that I spent quite a long time out working coronavirus and just thinking, well, I just need to work harder and work more. And luckily I couldn't go out anywhere. So that there was time for that. But what ended up happening is that the whole team just did brilliantly over that spring and summer. And we did things like we ran webinars every single day. We tried everything we could think of to just meet more people so that we could have the referrals that were coming in before. And everyone went so over and above what they had to do that was what meant the company not only grew back to its normal size, but grew a further 20%. And so it got to about August or September 2020. And I just thought, what do I do here? Because I could just go back to what I was doing before, which was traveling for 4 months of every year. That would be absolutely fine. I would love to do that again. But at any moment, not only could at any moment something could happen, which would mean that I had to get so back involved, but also I felt like the team that I had wasn't really a team that should just be my lifestyle business team. I felt like they were capable of quite a bit more than that. And so that's when I thought, I just feel like now is the time to sell. And before that, I hadn't really thought about it. We'd had some offers. We had one offer from a company who came quite far to come and see us, but it just didn't really feel right. The guy was quite shouty, and I was like, I don't want you shouting on my team. So I just stopped talking. I stopped the talks that we were having and didn't really think anything else of it. But once I thought, yes, we're going to sell, that was in August 2020. I just got super intentional about it and just made it happen. And that's when I started speaking to people who I thought would know about this stuff, getting advice, getting introductions, and going along the journey to making the sale happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. Did you hire somebody to support you through that process, or did you kind of just manage it yourself?
So the first thing I did, it was in stages, but the first thing I did was I spoke to an amazing agency owner who's got an agency about 9 times bigger than mine. And I just said to her, look, I'm thinking about selling. You would be the exact type of company that would buy us. I wasn't trying to sell to her, but I just wanted the advice. And I just said, what would you want to know? What are the questions you would ask me? And she said, well, funnily enough, we actually thought about buying a company. So I'll send you all the questions. I'll send you all this list of stuff. It was fantastic. And so
awesome.
it meant that I could prepare the company for sale based on what she'd told me. And then she put me in touch with an M&A consultant, and I spoke to him, and he said, okay, so we can help you prepare your second tier management people. We can help you put all these processes in place. We can help you do all these things. And I was like, I think I've done all that. And so because I'd been running it as a kind of lifestyle business for all that time, it was pretty much set up like that anyway. So that's when he said, okay, well, we can introduce you straight to the M&A broker. So I met the broker, and he was really good to speak to because it was just so routine. It was like, we sell agencies, that's what we do. And because it was so routine for him, because he sold I think they do 7 or 8 sales a year, it just made me think, it demystified everything for me. And he was very good at explaining the process. So he said, okay, well, first we'll send out a 1-pager, then we're going to introduce you to buyers. You're going to have chemistry meetings, then it's second meetings, then it's offers, then we'll negotiate, then we complete. And he said it would take 6 months, and it took 6 months and 2 days.
Yeah, wow. And 6 months is actually a pretty decent time. I mean, it's funny, I often get asked, how long does it take? And I always say, look, 6 to 9 months is fairly typical. I've seen it take longer. I've seen it been shorter, but you just never know. You're dealing with a bunch of unknown buyers. We know that you know the process, but you can't control the other side, right? So I don't
think I really minded how long it was going to take. I think it mattered that I was on the journey, however long it was going to be. It just felt like making progress in the right direction. And in the meantime, I was pretty happy. I wasn't desperate to sell. I was in a pretty happy situation, loved my team, loved our clients. So I think that helped as well. I think it would change the whole dynamic if you were desperate to get out. And I think it's obvious. So we met 12 different buyers in total. And for many of them, it felt like I was kind of interviewing them rather than they were interviewing me, which I feel like shifts the power a bit. And it probably wouldn't have been the case if I was really desperate to sell. I would have just been like, oh my God, take it, please. But that wasn't the case.
Yeah, nice. Meeting 12 buyers, I mean, that is quite a lot of people. I'm interested to know, how did you feel going through the process? Did you find it tiring? Were you having to do a lot of stuff on top of, well, I mean, I was going to say your day job, but I think you'd kind of built yourself out of a day job, hadn't you?
Yeah, I think that having built myself out of a day job really helped, because it's quite a time-intensive process. I was having, the 12 happened in August. No, it wasn't even August. I think it was just September. And sometimes there'd be a few a day. But the broker I work with had a very good process for how they would run each of the calls, and they were on the calls, and there was a structure, so I kind of knew what to expect for each one. But it's the hardest thing is remembering what you've told that person and making sure that it's all what's in it for them, rather than just me. I could have easily just gone off on a spiel about my agency, but it's not relevant. Yeah. It's not relevant. It has to be what they are looking for. And some were great, and some there would have been a really obvious synergy. And the ones that we got offers from, that was the case. But then some, it was like, it just wouldn't have worked. So there was one who specialized in fashion, and we had maybe a few fashion clients, but not enough for it to be a decent percentage. And it's fine. You just know it's not going to work. And that's what the chemistry meetings are for. And everyone's happy, but it's like, it's cool. So there are a few of those, but
good to find that stuff find it out early, right? In the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. It's, and so When you started off in this process, did you have a number in mind that you wanted for the business? And yeah.
Yeah, I had a number in mind that I wanted for the business. I actually wrote myself a check for that exact number, and I kind of signed it like the perfect buyer, because when I was getting intentional about the sale, I wanted to, like, I journaled on it. I really thought about it, and I really wanted to make everything align and make it happen. So yeah, it sounds a bit fluffy, but it worked. It was the exact amount we sold for. And it was the date I wrote on this pretend check. We actually met the buyer within 2 weeks of that date. But my goal was to make this number a no-brainer. I think with an agency especially, you're always chasing that next milestone, whether it's that next revenue milestone, that next headcount milestone, that next profit milestone. And at some point I was like, enough. We are the size we need to be. I don't want to give it another 18 months. I want to do this now. This is the number I'm looking for. We're going to make this a no-brainer. And once I thought about it in that way round, it was so strange because things just magically happened. We needed to find another certain amount of profit or revenue, and we just get a new client for that exact amount, and magic stuff kind of happened, which then made the sale the exact amount that I wanted. So yeah, I very much had a number in mind.
That's awesome. I love that. I think it's and I think it's important about being intentional around what you want and what's important. So now I am curious. The number you came up with, was it a number that you had kind of sat back and gone, well, this is kind of the number I want for my lifestyle and all the rest of it? Or was it a number that was more constructed out of what people were telling you a business should be worth?
It was constructed out of, it was what people were telling me a business should be worth. I spoke to a few different people. I think it's too easy to speak to one person and then fixate on their opinion and then use that for every conversation in the future. So I spoke to a range. I asked the agency owner who I spoke to at the start, the consultant, the broker, and I had another friend who just sold his agency as well. So I talked to him about their multiples. So it was very thought through.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And can I ask, what do agencies, typically sell for? How do they come up with the valuation?
I think that it can vary wildly. The broker told me that many of the ones they sell go for between 4 and 6 times EBITDA.
Okay.
But the certain things that change it, like having good processes, a second-tier management team, and some tech elements of a business sometimes as well can mean that it's much higher. So I think up to 10 wouldn't be crazy.
Wow. I mean, they're solid multiples. I know people listening to this podcast, I think when you start getting above the 5s and 6s, it starts to kind of raise some eyebrows, just because so many deals get done below those levels, right? And between you, me, and whoever might listen to this, I actually think Australia tends to be a little bit cheap, like it just, the multiples you get in Australia, I just don't think necessarily align with what you would get out of the States or Europe and places that are larger and maybe more established. So there are some regional differences there, but there's some really solid multiples. Do you feel, one of the things I'm interested, you mentioned 80% of your revenue was now recurring, sort of retainer based. And clearly that is far more attractive for a buyer and can help bump the valuation. How long did your clients typically stay on board for? Was there a normal life cycle?
It was a long time. We had some clients who'd been with us from the very start. We often signed people up on a 3 or 6 months minimum term, and then after that it was 30-day rolling monthly.
Yep.
So I didn't really, I said before, didn't I? I didn't really like the idea that something would come to an end and it would have an end date. I always liked that it was 30 days rolling monthly, because then there's freedom on both sides. There's an onus on both sides to keep the relationship really good. It's not like we'd often meet potential clients who were coming to the end of a 2-year relationship with an agency and looking for new people. And I just thought, I don't like that. I don't want anyone to feel like they're stuck in a relationship. I don't think that's good for anyone. So yeah, they stayed for a while, and we had very good relationships with them too.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's always just sort of interesting, like how long can you rely on any one particular client? But I definitely like that model of just, you keep it open-ended. Let's assume we'll keep doing good work and we'll want to stay together forever.
Yeah, because I don't think anyone, the plan A is not to change agencies. The plan is to find the one that can just grow with you, because I think it's a bit of a nightmare finding and training a new agency from scratch, only to do it again every 6 months. And with some, we actually, we must have met some potential clients who would basically open the meetings by talking about the last agency that they had that were rubbish, and the one before that were terrible. And we kind of made this phrase like agency graveyard, and we'd be like, oh, we're just going to join their agency graveyard, aren't we? And we took a lot of pride in sometimes being the one who actually did get on with them. But I don't necessarily this isn't a superiority thing. It's more like different clients work better with different agencies, but at the same time, there's other clients where you do just join the agency graveyard, and then they realize that the common denominator is them. Is them.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've all had clients like that. It's it's the way it's always going to be, right? We're all on a bell curve. So, so from you getting, I'm love to understand just this little bit of the journey through this exit, because you've picked a number. It's obviously a multiple of EBITDA. You've got a slight range there that you're targeting. From the moment you met the buyer, how long did that process take, and was there any kind of negotiation around those numbers, or did you kind of just align fairly quickly?
The numbers aligned fairly quickly. We got 3 offers, and one of the ones that we didn't go with, they were too low as a multiple. But not only were they too low as a multiple, they'd done funny things to the EBITDA. And so things like averaged it out over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And taken out various things and added various things in, and just messed around with it a little bit too much, which made me think, I don't know if starting out a relationship like this is it indicative of what the future is going to look like? And that's where I just wasn't sure. So although they were a really cool company, it would have been really cool to join them. It was just too many red flags. And I just thought, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, it's funny how people can get a little too cute with some of these things, right? Like a little bit too smart for their own good, trying to be clever and negotiating. It's
yeah. And then another thing that we had to watch out for, which I wouldn't have realized at first, but then when I found out more about them, that's when I realized that another company that put in an offer, they had just done a deal with about a year ago, they'd done a deal with another agency that had worked out really well for them as an acquisition. And so they kind of wanted to carbon copy that one onto ours. And it was actually very different, because the owner of the agency that they had already bought was kind of bored and wanted to be bought by a big company and wanted to go with them, and had these dreams of building that company within a bigger company. And that wasn't me, but they wanted it to be me. And so the offer came with lots of, and here's that amazing opportunity for Jodie, and here's what Jodie will be doing here. And it didn't make sense. And I think they were almost too far down let's just copy this deal, for them to make one that actually worked for us.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about what did you want when the deal went through? What was an ideal scenario in your mind?
I didn't think other than having the check that I made, the pretend check that I made, I didn't think too much about that, because that was sorted out pretty quickly. I think we got there pretty quickly. I mainly wanted the team to be looked after and the clients to be looked after. That was my thinking. That was what I was interviewing a buyer for, I guess. The first offer all of the offers that we got at first had a portion of the deal tied to an earn out, where I would need to stay and do certain things I don't know, secure the rest of the deal. I don't know. But once we dug into that together, and it was all on a very open, transparent conversation basis, it was quite clear that I wouldn't actually really have anything to do in an earn out. And then it ended up meaning that I wasn't required for one at all.
Yep. So with the earnouts, because I think a lot of people selling get presented with earnouts as a part of the offer. How long, if you can recall, how long were the earnout periods that they were talking about?
One was 3 years, one was 18 months, one was 2 years. But I think agency averages between 3 to 5 years a lot of the time. It's a lot of it's pretty much a kind of insurance for the buyer, I think. Yeah. But I think that it's just not always needed. And sometimes it might be better for the buyer that the owner who is ready to sell and move on isn't actually there cramping their style. And so they can go do their own thing. So it was all on a very amicable, happy, let's discuss this together type basis. I was very clear that my goal wasn't to run away. My goal was to do this right. And if that took a month, a year, 10 years, whatever, that's fine. I'll be around. So I was really clear on that.
Yeah, nice. Well, I think so to confirm, so you got your deal without an earnout. And was there the other two sort of portions we always see in deal structures is there's obviously the upfront cash, which is straight in your bank, and we all love that the most. Sometimes there's also can be a deferred component where they say, hey, listen, it's not like an earnout at risk, but we're going to pay you in some increments over time. Did you have anything like that in your deal?
Mine was pretty straightforward because I think part of the reason it was pretty straightforward was because quite quickly I just said to the broker, let me chat to them. And so we were just having conversations between us where we got to a situation that worked for both of us pretty quickly. So I guess I would always encourage that with anyone thinking about selling, just get on a level, and they're buyers, and it's a big scary, they're going to buy your company, but really they're just people, and you're just a person, and you're trying to get the best deal together.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. I mean, this whole interviewing thing, you're obviously sifting for the people you connect with, and you feel like it's going to be a better journey, right? And I think if you nail onto that sort of stuff, it's easier to resolve things when you've got people on both sides being reasonable, right?
Yeah, there was one agency that I met that I just remember thinking, you don't like your team. That was what I came out with. I think that's what I wrote in my notes, does not like team. And then I was thinking, this isn't very good for my team, because they're going to add themselves to the nuisance pile that this company thinks their team are. So they were some of the ones where I was like, this isn't going to work. But it was useful to meet so many and see the range. Yeah,
I guess it makes you gives you food for thought in terms of what's really important to you. So you get your deal done. What did the transition look like for you? Did you have to hang around at all?
I wrote a giant spreadsheet, which was everything that I knew I needed to do before I left, I guess. So it was like, I feel like it was about 200 lines of get this in place, make sure this is okay. I'm not super in the detail all the time, but with that, I really was, because I just wanted to make sure that there was never any, I hated this idea of it being, what's the answer? Oh, Jodie would know. I just wanted to eliminate anything like that. And I was very happy to be contacted and asked any questions, but I thought it would be better for the team if they didn't need to do that. So it was a super giant spreadsheet that I just worked through, and it took 2 weeks.
Okay. So 2 weeks, you did your deal, you hung around for 2 weeks and it was done.
Yeah, but I was happy to hang around for longer. But it was 2 weeks in the end.
I think that's a dream role. I mean, it's I've often had clients who have said, look, expect, even without earnouts, all the rest of you, not required, they don't want to employ you. Expect that it could be a couple of months, at least, where you're in and out, you're doing things, and you're in meetings, but. No, that's very, very organised of you, Jodie. Well done.
Yeah. But I think that if you go back to the 3 months before the 5-week Australia trip, maybe that was laying the groundwork for that, because it was putting processes in place to not be needed. So I think throughout the journey, there's been small small elements of preparing us for sale. I just didn't know that that was the case at the time.
Yeah, nice. And I guess the takeaway here then for anyone listening is don't wait to the last minute or that you're in a transaction before you start thinking about this stuff and how to systemize and set up your processes. And, what you do today is going to make life a lot easier later.
I think the one line is start your earn out now. If you know that you want to sell, almost pretend that you have sold. Write yourself a pretend check with today's date on it, and then act like you're doing that transition. Get yourself so that you're surplus to requirements, and then find a buyer that wants to take off your hands this beautiful entity that is going to work for everyone.
I'm going to actually put that in quotes, I think, because that's a brilliant piece of advice. And if you do get it right, you may be able to walk out very, very quickly. And Jodie, I don't know if you mind. Do you mind sharing with people where you are, where you're calling from today?
Yes, I'm in Mexico, which is really funny because before we got on the call, I said, it's really cliche, isn't it? Like you sell your business and then you go to Mexico. So here I am living the cliche, but yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think a lot of people would love to perhaps sell up and walk out and head off to Mexico or wherever tropical and warm they would like to be. So no, I think that's cool. I'm interested, Jodie, what are you doing these days? Like, you're obviously traveling, though, but you strike me as the type of person who probably doesn't just go and do nothing and sit on a beach all day, even though that does sound very nice.
I compete for Great Britain in powerlifting, so I train a lot, and I'm doing a bit of sitting on beaches, but not too much because I'm starting another business at some point in the next couple of months. But it's been about 10 months of thinking about what to start and making sure it's the right way forward, and kind of enjoying it at the same time, because it's so easy to not let yourself enjoy it, to always feel like you have to be moving on to the next thing. So I've spent a lot of time journaling, chilling out, making sure that I know what I want before making any moves.
Yeah, nice. And are you looking at something, without kind of giving away too much here, but are you starting something in a similar field, or?
I'm going from agency to product. So it's a software product, and the agency to product journey is absolutely fascinating because it's so different. I've got such a beginner's mind with it all because there's so much stuff that I'm learning from scratch. So I'm blogging about that quite a lot and just trying to make sense of it in my head. But yeah, it's a fun process so far.
Yeah, that sounds cool. So you mentioned your blogging there. So is this something that people can look up and read?
Yes. So my website is jodiecook.com, JODIECOOK.com. And if you put /hey, HEY, then that's my blog, and you can subscribe, and I send one out every Monday and Thursday. And it's all about entrepreneurship, how to run a business without it running you. And it's a bit about happiness, lifestyle design, and soft end agency to product as well.
That's awesome. And I did note that you actually wrote a book. You've written a couple of books, but one that really kind of jumped out at me with, having kids was how to raise entrepreneurial kids. That's cool. I love that.
Yeah. So I co-wrote that with Daniel Priestley, who is Australian, actually. He's from Brisbane.
Yeah. Key person of influence. Yep.
Yeah. So he's a dad of 3. He's got 3 kids, all under the age of 7. And I don't have kids, but I was kind of raised to be entrepreneurial almost by accident, really. My mum and dad just kind of helped me to be very independent from a super early age. So yeah, we got together, wrote that book, and it's amazing. Like our plan is to create like the next version of entrepreneurs, the next generation of entrepreneurs. So yeah, have a read. I'll send you a copy.
That'd be awesome. I'd love to read it. I've got 2 boys who are 12 and 14, and my eldest, a couple of years ago, I was helping him set up his little gurneying business in the local streets, and washing driveways and doing little things to make some money. And I think it's fascinating. So any kind of framework to help people kind of work out how to do that in a better way, I think would be awesome.
It really is a framework as well. It's like it's super entrepreneurial. Like we've turned it into a method, and it gets good feedback.
Nice. Well, look, if there's any way we can help in the future, please reach out. But and are you, other than the blog, are you happy for people to reach out and connect with you?
Yes, I would love that. I always love hearing from people who listen to podcast episodes that I've been on. So yeah, on that website, jodiecook.com, there's a contact form. So just say, hey, I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. That's fantastic. We'll put your links into the show notes with your LinkedIn, your website, and all the rest of it, and a link to the book on Amazon, so people can go and find that. Jodie, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. It's been a fascinating journey. I'm very jealous that you're in Mexico right now, although, as you said before, Sydney's not a bad place to be, but I can't wait to get on a plane myself. But look, once again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Great. Thank you, Simon.